What is going on, everybody? My name is Dakota and welcome back to Cologne. Today we have another new fragrance. It was a 2024 release, and that is going to be Azzaro's Most Wanted Intense Eau de Toilette. A little bit of a mouthful whenever you have to say it like that, but what can you do? So I recently was able to finally get my hands on this fragrance. I got a sample of this fragrance when it first came out and I really liked it. All in all, I feel like Azzaro did a really solid release on this fragrance. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna get into the atomizer. We're gonna show that off a little bit. A little bit of a weak atomizer, if I'm being honest. It has kind of a wide spray. It doesn't really have a strong spray. It's not pressurized, I don't think. So atomizer is a little bit of a letdown on this one. But the fragrance is not, and that is the most important thing. So what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna put a few there on the arm. I'm gonna get that drying down a little bit. And what you get when this first gets in the air and when it first kind of gets around is a rock solid fragrance that is very green, fresh. It's a very soft fragrance. It's almost a little subtle, and it has a lot of florals going on in here. And that's kind of what you tend to get whenever it first hits the air. Is I feel like you can kind of pick out some of the floral in this, and you can definitely tell it's very green in nature, which I actually really like that. As far as the note breakdown goes on this, they gave a very, very limited note. The only top note they gave was bergamot. The middle note is going to be lavender, and the base note is going to be liquor and moss. For this being an eau de toilette, you do kind of get a little bit of a booze nature to that, and I really like that. I really like my boozy fragrances, and I kind of feel like where this one went with a twist is this one is very like boozy green. You don't get a lot of those clean, crisp, fresh style of liquor fragrances that tends to be as fresh as this one is, because there's a lot of green in this. The moss note they used in this is very intense. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this a little bit of time. I'm going to let it dry down a little bit. I'll catch y'all here in a second. So I gave this one about 30 or 40 minutes to dry down, and I genuinely enjoy this fragrance. It's not one that just blows you away when it comes to like complexity or anything like that, but it's just a nice, soft, subtle fragrance that just seems to be like a really solid wear. So as it starts to dry down a little bit, some of the lavender that you get in the middle does start to pull through very nicely. This does kind of lend itself to be a little more floral. As it starts to get into the deeper part of the dry down, the moss starts to turn this a little bit more of an earthy green. And it's got a little bit of that liquor undertone, and it's got a little bit of that floral undertone once it gets all the way into the dry down. But it's blended well enough that it really pulls it off. All right, so now we're going to get into the price, performance, and availability of this. Availability wise, most of your big box stores are going to have this. Most of your discounters should get this. The pricing on this is the 100 ml bottle. I want to say retail, you can catch this for about 110 bucks. Most discounters, you find this somewhere in that 80 to 90 range. So it's not a heavily discounted one, but it's still good enough. So as far as performance goes on this, the longevity on this is actually pretty solid for an eau de toilette. I got about 5 or 6 hours out of this. And all things considered, I feel like that's pretty rock solid for what you get, for the fragrance you get and everything like that. The sillage on this is a little lackluster though. The sillage, it doesn't really want to fall off your skin whenever you're up and moving around. It doesn't really leave a good trail. The projection on this, about the same. It does sit close to the skin for being an eau de toilette. Normally the eau de toilettes tend to kind of jump off you a little bit. This one sits a little closer to the skin. So given how some of the other Azzaros have performed in that like sillage and projection range, I kind of expected just a little bit more out of this one, but it's still good enough for what it is. All right, now that a little bit more time has went by, I let this kind of get into the deepest dry down that it can. It does kind of get to that deep dry down quick. It's probably less than 30, 40 minutes, honestly. But one thing that you get whenever this gets all the way into the deepest parts of the dry down is this develops almost a vetiver style of earthiness. Some of the moss, it keeps it green, it kind of keeps it fresh, but there's certain points whenever you kind of smell it, you'll get kind of little whiffs of it here and there. And it does kind of smell a little bit dirty, almost as leaning more toward like a vetiver style than a moss style. I do kind of wish they would have put something just a little bit more sweet or maybe a little bit more floral in this. I kind of wish it went just a little heavier on the floral or the liquor, because when you first spray it, when you first get that opening, to me, the opening is where it's at. This is a wonderful opening. Now, and one thing I've done with this fragrance is, as I've said in the channel before, I like to layer my fragrances on themselves. So after about an hour or two, I did put another 1 or 2 sprays on my wrist where I'd put the other 2. And some of that fresh green liquor with some of that floral, it almost stuck to it a little bit. And after I freshened up on it a little bit, I enjoyed the fragrance way more with some of that lavender and some of that liquor and moss and everything was able to kind of stick to what was already there. And it kind of boasted those notes a little bit. It made it feel a little bit fresher. It made it feel a little bit greener. And on top of that, it gave the performance a really big boost because the performance on longevity wise is really good on them. All right, so if I was to give this fragrance a rating right now, I would honestly give it an 8.5 to a 9 out of 10. The only real things I'm a docket for is I wish some of the sillage and projection was just a little bit better based on Azzaro's track record, because like the original Wanted EDT, even though it's not a very loved fragrance, but the Wanted Tonic, honestly, both of those kind of outperform this one in terms of projection and sillage. In terms of longevity, this one outdoes both of those other toilettes. So it's kind of a trade-off. The other thing that I touched on just now that I wish they would have done with this is I wish they would have turned up the liquor note just a little bit, or I wish they would have put something just a little bit sweet in this, because once you get to a skin scent style of dry down, it's very earthy, it's almost a little dirty, and it turns into something that just has like tiny notes of like that floral, a little bit of that liquor, a little bit of that moss. To me, this turns, honestly, what I pick up on this is more of a vetiver style earthy than a moss style earthy, because when it does get to the deepest part of the dry down, it doesn't hold on to that green mossy style. It kind of gets, a little dirtier, maybe even like a little herbal. It just kind of clouds it up just a little bit. Still a rock solid fragrance though, but it's just kind of meh. And then the only other thing I'm going to dock it for just this much is, I'm not going to say this is a generic fragrance, but it is more generic from what they've traditionally released. As far as creativity on this goes, I think it was solid, but I feel like they could have done just a little bit more with it. But for what they wanted to do, for what they wanted to release, they wanted to expand the Most Wanted line a little bit and kind of give that fresh twist to it. And I think they succeeded in that. This is a good, solid, fresh wear that I'm probably going to reach for maybe this fall. This does lean to be more of like a fall fragrance for me. It's more like a fall freshie than like a summer freshie. So around fall, I feel like when they released this was a good release. But I do think that is going to get us wrapped up. I'll go ahead and get in this bottle one more time. Just a super clean presentation. They kept that 6-shooter style. They kept that black top and everything else. Just to me, this is just a really clean presentation. I like it. I wish the atomizer was just a little bit better. I do kind of feel like that's a little bit weak. This cap is a snap-on cap, so you can kind of hold it from there. I just don't recommend doing that very often. But all in all, the bottle quality and everything you got, it's pretty rock solid. I like it. It's got a good weight to it, which Azzaro normally does. But that is going to get us wrapped up. As always, thank you everyone for watching. Thank you everyone for subscribing, for sticking around, for staying tuned, watching the videos, commenting on the videos, the feedback and stuff. I truly appreciate that, so thank you. And as always, we will see you next time.